Darlene Williams told me about what you guys are doing here. I'm a psychotherapist and I practice out of Tampa. And when she was telling me that you guys are trying to be in the forefront of a trauma-informed community, I thought that was terrific because people still don't know what's out there to help them. Over the last 15 to 20 years, we've had more trauma therapies coming out that are very, very useful that we didn't have 20 years ago. So we're able to really help our clients in a much different way than we have before. For instance, I think this is really great because I had someone who called me, this was about a year ago, who was wanted information on trauma for his son. And in talking to him, I found out that he was a Vietnam War vet. And so I was mentioning, well, maybe you need to come see me after your son. And he said, no, I will have this fuse buried deep inside my brain for the rest of my life, and I'm already 65. And I don't want to go there again. He did other therapies years ago. So what that told me is that it helped him manage his symptoms, but it didn't really clear the trauma for him in his experiencing. And he didn't know that he could. He just thought this was a cross that he had to carry and bear for the rest of his life. So I'm going to talk a little bit about rapid resolution therapy because it's what I do, what I've been trained in, and I think it's just phenomenal. And I'm very excited about the other therapies that are out there too. The main thing that I see with rapid resolution therapy is that it works with the brain and the mind in a much different way. It works with how the brain processes, how we take in information, how the brain maps and codes information, how we store it, and then how we use our learning in our storage to navigate our world. So when we have new experiences that are traumatic or weird or out of our field of reference or that are horrific or horrible, our brains will scan a map and go back to say, well, how am I supposed to be dealing with this? What's my learning bent? How do I grab onto this to make sense out of it? And part of the trauma comes is that it's new. It's something they haven't experienced before. They don't know. You don't know. So what happens is panic, anxiety, stress. A lot of symptoms start occurring because people's other parts of their minds are trying to make sense of it and they don't know how. So I think rapid resolution therapy hits number one. It's a very quick process. It's a very peaceful process. It engages the brain in how we use different parts of our mind. So I used to use basically cognitive behavior therapy. I was a big REBT person, rational behavior therapy. I did that a lot. I did that with addictions work. I did that with trauma and anger. But what I found and what I think the mental health community finds is it's not really getting to the core and the crux of clearing the symptoms of trauma, the ongoing influences, the negativity that happens, the inability for a person to navigate the world in a calm, peaceful way afterwards. So it hits that. It hits the way our brains process. It hits the way we scan. But it pinpoints not only that, but how our minds map to other experiences from the past, because that's how our learning works. So you have the trauma event, but you also have what comes before it, what people are referencing. For instance, I'll use an example. Let's say I had a client once who was mugged in the parking lot. She was mugged in the parking lot. The guy had like a red cap or a red shirt on. It happened when she came to see me 5 years ago. So when she's out having a salad with her girlfriends at the mall, she's having panic attacks. She doesn't understand why. Part of her intellectually understands that, hey, that happened 5 years ago, but she's still responding today. So what we find out with the fight or flight system going on that is genetic, that we all have programmed, is that part of our minds are trying to keep us safe. It's tapping us saying, hey, maybe there is a flash of red over here in your field. Maybe there is a similar sound. Or maybe you're just uneasy in new situations or being out in public or being back at the mall. We don't know till we go in and they sit in front of us because every experience is individual to that person. It's how they're going to view what happened to them. And it's based on all their frame of referencing. So once we did the processes and we looked at what was going on and we looked at the time mechanism that gets distorted within the brain, that event 5 years ago is not happening now, but I'm responding as if it's still happening. Once we clear that up, then we can go to how they viewed the event. Now, here's the beauty, I think, of RRT, is that we found that our minds scan for information all the time. So how does RRT pinpoint what it needs to know from the past to help clear that event and clear what's going on presently? Well, we scan all the time. So I use this example I do with my clients, 2 times 2 is 4. I wasn't so hot about, but it was like, what? We scan all the time. So information that's learned and experienced is stored back here. So we retrieve it very fast, but nothing's attached to 2 times 2 is 4. But if I said math class, algebra, geometry, math professor, yeah, I'm seeing different reactions on people's faces already. We have much more attached to that based on what your individual experiencing was. Oh, I was good at math, oh, I didn't like my geometry teacher, or I failed this test. So next time I go take a math test, either I'm really prepared and I love it because I love math, or I'm freaking out, having anxiety and panic, going, uh-oh, math isn't my thing. So we found out that mind knows what other experiences are connected to what's going on. So think of your brain like a computer and a library, and everything is categorized and mapped and connected. So minds can go back and fish. So here's an example of that. I had a client who had panic attacks going across the bridge, 275 over here. So I brought her in, and I know her history and I know about her. And so I thought, okay, I wonder which one she's going to do first. What's going to come up in her field? Going across the bridge, she pulls off before she goes to work. She has panic attacks and anxiety. Well, what happened was, is the first memory that came up for her was her mother died when she was 7. And she had grief therapy for that. So a lot of that got cleared up, but there was something about that, some residue, or how her mind viewed it, that needed to be looked at first before she could go to driving over a bridge. So I'm doing the RRT processes, and she's telling me, oh, well, I'm like 7 years old, and I'm sitting on a log, and I'm playing by myself. She goes, oh, my mother died. I said, well, what did that mean to you? Well, I was all alone. I said, oh. So after we looked at that and cleared that up, the next event she was able to go through was driving across the bridge. Now, why she makes those connections in her mind of fear and being alone and no support, and it transferred to driving across the bridge, is her unique individual experience. So we worked with that, and worked with the one driving to work, no more panic attacks. So it's an actually amazing process that goes really deep to the core of how we view things, but how we store things, but how we map our world. And it clears it in a very quick and peaceful way, because there's other processes that go along with it. So when I started learning RRT and added my own views to it and developed these processes, it's just been a night and day difference when people come in to see me. You can clear an event in one session or a few sessions, where before we were taking a very long time to do that, because we went back to talk about their other experiences, but we didn't have a map. We didn't know where to go. We relied on the client who knew where to go somewhat. But a lot of times they're quite surprised, and I have to tell them, well, don't worry about what's coming up. It's coming up for a reason, let's look at that. And then there's always the connection to it. So for me, it's just been an amazing process for trauma. And I'm really very excited that you guys are doing this, because I think people aren't informed about what is out there. So I think if they get informed that there are different therapies, there's new stuff out there. With neuropsychology, we're figuring out the mind and the brain even more as we go. So I think it's just a very exciting area. And I think it's great you guys are in the forefront.